The media fixates on the kinetic cost of missile inventories. This is a deliberate misdirection. The launch-on-warning protocols for ICBMs are a relic, a loud and fantastically expensive deterrent. They are not the primary vector of modern state-level conflict. The systemic threat is not the explosion, it is the silence that precedes it. The global economy is not underpinned by tanks or aircraft carriers. It is a superorganism built on a central nervous system of subsea data cables and low Earth orbit satellites. This is the battlefield. CSIS reports confirm the mathematical certainty. The cost to sever a critical data artery is infinitesimal compared to the multi-trillion-dollar liquidity crisis it would trigger in microseconds. A state facing a terminal solvency crisis, against which a powerful actor applies relentless, zero-sum pressure, as documented in policies stating an intent to get everything we want, does not calculate its survival based on symmetrical warfare. It calculates leverage. The rational response is not a missile launch. It is asymmetric escalation. It is the deployment of a silent vector. This protocol is designed to create a blind leviathan. By severing the optic nerves, the cables, and blinding the eyes, the satellites, the global hegemon is not defeated. It is turned into a liability, a powerful, kinetic entity, suddenly devoid of data, thrashing in the dark. Its automated financial systems and launch-on-warning defenses become systemic accelerants for global collapse. The true weapon is not the hostile action itself, but the target's pre-programmed panicked response. The motive is not ideology. It is accounting. According to analysis from security think tanks like RUSI, the Ukraine conflict is best understood as a solvency crisis. The Kremlin faced a terminal domestic liability, a restive population, decaying political capital, and an unpopular war machine that was costing more to maintain than it was worth. War was not a first choice. It was a desperate, non-negotiable pivot to convert a domestic political deficit into a foreign policy asset. It's a balance sheet correction, executed with kinetic tools. This is a systemic blueprint, not a unique event. Data on Iran confirms the exact same preconditions. Reports from Iran International show that before any escalation, Tehran was explicitly warned of widespread unrest. Their response was not reform, it was force. This choice accelerates the solvency crisis. By suppressing dissent, instead of resolving the underlying fiscal decay, the regime doubles down on a failing model, making an external, asymmetric conflict the only remaining path to reset the board and ensure regime survival. The trigger for this mechanism is the application of absolute, zero-sum pressure by a dominant power. The declared doctrine of "we will get everything we want" removes all off-ramps. It communicates to the brittle state that negotiation is capitulation and that no compromise will be accepted. For a leadership facing a solvency death spiral, this leaves only one rational calculation. If we cannot win conventionally, and we cannot surrender without liquidation, we must change the game entirely. We must make the cost of our destruction unacceptably high for the aggressor. This is the pivot. Weakness forces a state's hand, converting its fragility into a launch-on-warning protocol for asymmetric warfare. When a state is conventionally and fiscally insolvent, like Iran, or even sub-state actors facing self-inflicted fiscal crises like Alberta, it cannot afford a dollar-for-dollar conflict. Its only viable strategy is to find the cheapest lever that causes the most expensive damage. This is not a sign of madness. It is the mathematical certainty of a cornered entity converting its local insolvency into a global, kinetic liability. The central mechanism is not political, it is economic. It is the inversion of kinetic cost. According to analysts at RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute, a modern main battle tank represents an asset valued at approximately $5 million. The asymmetric countermeasure is a first-person view drone valued at $500. This is not a 10-to-1 or 100-to-1 cost disparity. It is a 10,000-to-1 ratio. This is a mathematical vector for converting a superpower's military-industrial supremacy into a fatal economic liability. For a state like Iran, facing systemic pressure and internal solvency crises, this equation is not an option. It is the only rational protocol. It cannot compete symmetrically. Instead, it must leverage the new economics of lethality. It can field 10,000 kinetic threats for the price of a single opposing asset. This strategy does not target the enemy's army. It targets their treasury. It is designed to inflict a terminal solvency crisis by making the cost of force projection unsustainable. Every deployed high-value asset becomes a high-risk financial instrument. This is the democratization of violence. The capability to project lethal, standoff force, once the exclusive domain of nation-states with trillion-dollar budgets, has now collapsed in cost. It is now accessible to brittle states and non-state actors. When a powerful actor applies zero-sum pressure, they are not fighting a peer. They are creating a launch-on-warning scenario where the cornered entity's only move is to export chaos at a discount, converting their bankruptcy into global kinetic risk. The operational theater is not where legacy media directs your attention. The true staging grounds are the gray zones, proxy laboratories designed to stress-test the solvency protocol. CSIS analysis identifies these environments. Subnational entities like Alberta, experiencing a self-inflicted fiscal crisis, serve as a control group. The objective is to calibrate the precise application of zero-sum pressure required to push a brittle state toward a solvency event. Tehran's choice of force over reform was not an anomaly. It was the expected output. These zones are where the blueprint for converting local insolvency into a global kinetic liability is refined. The documented disruption to global travel from tensions in Iran and elsewhere is simply a low-cost metric of the protocol's success, a measure of how efficiently a regional pressure point can cascade into systemic global cost. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a strategy. It is a pre-calculated response to a decapitation strike. It is the protocol that ensures retaliatory action, even if command and control is eliminated. According to analysts at RUSI, the system is designed to bypass human hesitation. When the early warning network confirms an inbound kinetic attack, the counterstrike is automated. The logic is simple. A decapitated state cannot retaliate. Therefore, the only survival-based response is to launch before impact. Now, introduce the accelerant, the fog of digital war. A hostile cyber attack does not need to destroy a missile. It only needs to blind the radar. It creates a data vacuum. In that moment of blindness, the commander faces a binary choice with incomplete information. Is the system down due to a simple malfunction, or is it down because the radar arrays have just been vaporized by the leading edge of a full-scale first strike? This is the systemic liability. A powerful actor applying zero-sum pressure, publicly stating they will get everything we want, source number 2, forces a cornered state into a heightened alert posture. When a brittle state like Iran, already choosing force over reform to manage internal unrest, source number 1, is subjected to this pressure, its risk calculus shifts. The fear of a decapitation strike becomes paramount. The incentive is to lower the threshold for a launch-on-warning response. In the digital fog, the protocol is absolute. The commander cannot afford to be wrong. CSIS reports indicate that under these conditions, the only rational, system-approved action is to assume the worst-case scenario. The commander is forced to launch. This is the mathematical vector for converting a localized solvency crisis, whether in Tehran or even Alberta, source Jabber 4, into a global kinetic event. A cyber attack becomes the trigger, and the launch on warning doctrine becomes the weapon. The governing dynamic is not chaos, it is a predictable protocol. When a dominant power applies zero-sum pressure, stating it will get everything we want, source the Martyr 2, it forces a brittle state's calculus from prosperity to pure survival. An entity that defaults to internal force over reform, source number 1, does not absorb external pressure. It converts it. This conversion is not random. It is an asymmetric vector designed to transform a localized solvency crisis into a distributed kinetic liability. CSIS models confirm this is the emerging blueprint for 21st century conflict. The objective is not victory. The objective is to impose a cost so high that the initial pressure becomes strategically insolvent. The mathematical certainty of this model dictates the next phase is not overt conflict, but a calibration shot. It must be deniable, yet its signal must be irrefutable. Within 12 months, expect a coordinated cyber-physical event causing a 72-hour operational blackout at a critical U.S. West Coast container port. Attribution will be officially impossible.